And we're breaking down as of right now anyway, the broken down Warriors, the 2 timeline plan. Ray, is it time for the Warriors to abandon that plan? It's certainly something, obviously, that they're having to take a hard look at. Here's Bob Myers. This was with Steiny and Guru yesterday. What the plan has always been for the young players and how much they could contribute.
I've always kind of thought that when we drafted the young guys, eventually they'd help us. But in the meantime, let's try to give, like we did last year, this team a chance to win a championship. Don't know if it would happen or not. And again, you don't really know with youth. Sometimes 20-year-olds help you. Sometimes they don't. When they don't, you got to look to some of the veterans. Some of our vets haven't played. DiVincenzo, I think, is a veteran in some sense. Iguodala, we'll see when he gets back. We leaned on a lot of the guys last year, and I'm sure that's been stated as to the value that those minimum guys brought last year. We'll see. It's a long deal. I think the young guys will do more than they're doing. I'd be surprised if this is what it is this early. I think the bench will be better. The starters, they have a good net rating, but even them, I think there's growth.
Here's the concerning thing, Ray. Wiseman neither one of them really has played that much. You mentioned how little they've played. Wiseman has barely played, and you don't even know if you send him to the G League, does that help him address the areas in which he needs to improve? I'm not sure it does. And Kuminga also hasn't played much. Going back to last year, how many times have we heard Steve Kerr, and I know you guys are going to talk to Steve Kerr tomorrow, how many times has Steve Kerr said, yep, Kuminga's in the rotation now? And then within a couple of games, he's back out. They've given him every chance, and they just did this, Ray. And I'm not coming after you. You're not arguing against this, but it just really illustrates and underscores where they are. Just recently, Friday, we're going to see Kuminga is going to play a lot more, and then he didn't play in the second half against Sacramento. He just can't stay on the floor. So how do you develop the young guys when they can't play well enough to stay on the floor for a team that wants to contend?
Well, the truth of the matter is they can't send both of them down to the G League at the same time because they need to have a large presence other than Looney.
Yeah.
And so
Looney, you're talking about bigs. I'm sorry.
Yeah, somebody's got to play that role because the whole idea behind drafting those 2 guys was so that Draymond Green did not have to play bigs 30 minutes a night. I think, somebody's going to have to, go down there and get those minutes. I think whichever one it is, it almost doesn't matter at this point. But in terms of your initial question, it's way too early to abandon anything. I mean, you can't just go up. These guys can't play because we saw them for 11 games and they're not useful, so let's get rid of them. And replace them with what? Well, neither of them have.
You need to make a trade, I think. And I know now.
But what guy helps you now?
Well, it's not clear who would be available. I'm not dodging your question.
That's the essential point. It's making a trade is irrevocable, and if you're going to do that, you have to be able to say to your team, if nobody else, I just made us better. And there's no such thing in this situation as addition by subtraction. They're going to have to stay with this for a good while longer. And if it gets to the point...
What's a good while longer? I think if...
Half a season, the All-Star break.
Trade deadline. I mean, to me, if it's January and this is still the way they're playing, it's time to do something, but I also think that might be too late.
Well, you know what? You roll the dice. I mean, this is part of the gamble. I mean, it's a sort of thing where when you take a pig in the poke, like the 49ers did with their draft choice a couple of years ago, and like the Warriors have done here in 2 different situations, you're hoping that your judgment's right. And so far, the jury's out on all 3 of them. Because while everybody wants to rave about their upside is code for they don't get it yet. And you're either going to be patient with them because you're sort of all in on both of them, or you rip up your bench in the middle of a year after you just won a championship and while your best player is having one of his best seasons ever. So how do you walk up to Stephen Curry and say, we're going to trade one of these guys, but we can't get anybody that'll help?
Well,
because
you wouldn't do that.
If you could say,
But
if you
that's what
could tell
they've
me,
done.
if you could tell me right now,
Mm-hmm.
if we move Weissman, we can get Miles Turner. Do that in a heartbeat.
Probably take you more to get that, but I'm with you.
But that's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
But if you're just trading them to trade them because you don't want to look at them anymore,
No one is suggesting that.
but you've got to walk.
I thought I know. I'm not.
I didn't say you were, but you've
You
got to walk.
implied it. I'm kidding. Go ahead.
Is it 5:54 yet?
Nope, not quite.
2 hours and 30 minutes, and
Yeah.
I'm counting every second. No, I mean, dumping them because you're offended by them after one. I'm not saying you are.
But is anybody saying
Pipe
that?
down.
Is anybody saying? I don't know anyone that's saying that.
Nobody credible. But the point is, I don't know that you want to set a date where you go, if you don't have it by Christmas Day, we have to get rid of you. Or if you don't have it by Valentine's Day, we have to get rid of you. They might have to ride this out for a whole year.
Here's.
I mean, it's not. I mean, you can't just you don't dump these guys just because you're offended by them. You've got to get a return because the core of your team, which is playing very well when it's just them,
the starting five is very well.
Deserves, if nothing else, to get immediate and useful help in any trade for either of those guys. And if you can't get that, don't bother.
Here is a nice piece of fuel for your argument. You go back to last year, and I think it was until early or mid-January, the Celtics were kind of, I mean, right-minded people were suggesting they need to break up this core because Brown and Tatum can't play together. And then January, it all came together. They ended up going to the finals. So you're right. You don't have to make that decision now. But you're also right when you say with this core playing the way it is, with the starting five playing as well as they are, getting nothing from the bench, you have to start seriously considering what can we get for our young guys. And if you do trade any of these guys, if you trade, and I'm being specific, if you trade Wiseman and or Kuminga, and or Poole, although he's awfully hard to trade now because he just signed his deal, then that in a way is admitting that, all right, this foundation of the future we were building, that's not working. And that's where I think they're already there. If they're not there, I think it's inevitable that they're going to be there. You're right. They're going to afford to wait, but they don't have the bench right now. You've got Steph playing well, and the bench has given you nothing. It's alarming. It's stunning how you see that drop off as soon as the bench players start coming in. The company line is, you know what? That's true, but Poole will play better, blah, blah, blah. These guys will not always play as poorly as they're playing now, but the young guys look so far away from where you need them to be right now. I think you have to seriously start looking at some of these trade possibilities.
Okay, well, I haven't heard any. I haven't heard any trade possibilities. All I've heard is the standard knee-jerk, they got to trade these guys. For what?
Well,
because that's the answer to the question. Again, I mean, I made the point, you don't trade these guys to trade them. You trade them if you can improve the team that 1 through 5 looks like a championship contender.
People are going to scoff, and I don't think it would work now, as I mentioned with Poole's deal. If I could trade some of those young players and end up getting Kevin Durant, I would do that in the blink of an eye. But I don't think that's feasible. You'd have to have another team involved. That's if the Nets wanted to do it.
And you'd have to get a new coach.
If the Warriors wanted to do it. Really? I don't think so.
I think Steve got pretty fed up with that whole thing at the end. I mean, he loves his talent because he's not an idiot.
Yeah, and he wants to win.
I don't think he wants to re-inherit that.
Well, it's probably not
I know
feasible.
That's not an available trade for them. But you're going to have a guy who basically has had the run of a franchise for 2 years, and all of a sudden he's just going to be a part of the bigger picture in which there is a guy on that roster who is considered to be more important than he is, not talent wise, but just sort of emotionally and leadership wise. I don't know that Durant wants any part of that either.
I think you need to trade at some point here. Okay, I understand the argument that, you need to give him a little longer. At some point, you need to trade one of the two, and get something back for that one, and also to send a message to the other one, Ray.
They're both getting the message now. They're both getting the message now. And they're getting the message through the most effective way possible. One of them's getting 8 minutes a game. The other one's getting 0 minutes a game.
But if they're getting the message and they're still not playing well, that's great. But it doesn't help me if I'm trying to win this year.
But
when the window is closed. I know it's cliche, but you know what I mean? It is true. With an older team, the window on another potential championship, it's closing fast.
Is it closing
Indiana
fast?
Jones, here comes. I got to get underneath there before, here comes a boulder.
Is it closing that fast? Do you know that? See, I mean, after 11 games.
It is. Look at Clay and the way he's playing. Look at Draymond. And you got Steph.
Draymond Green is playing very well this year.
Playing well. Yeah. Is he playing great? I wouldn't say so. I think there's some drop off there. And of course there is.
Wiggins is better than he's been.
Wiggins he's been up and down. A great game against Sacramento. I'm with you. He had played phenomenally.
No,
the starting five as a unit is playing well, but it's not sustainable. Steve Kerr said this himself after the last game. The way we won that game, the way we're playing now, we can't keep doing that.
Okay, but again, the devil's in the details. How do you make this better? Do you trade a guy now without any hope that you're getting a decent return?
No. That's not on the board.
No, so
I'm with you 100%. I'm not saying
so. If you're not going
these guys,
but if you're not going to trade either one of them, then you stay with the plan you've got for as long as you possibly can, and it might be the trade deadline. It might just be then.
Here's what I'm sure you remember, Ray, you were here. Here's what Tim Kawakami told you and Larry about
this.
Well,
I wasn't paying attention to that.
Well, then you might enjoy this Warrior trade situation and which of the young players they would be most likely to deal.
I would think the most tradable thing they've got is James Wiseman. I'm not reporting anything. I'm not saying anything. We know how much the front office loves him. We know how much Joe Lacob loves him, who has a pretty strong voice in all decision making. But that's a big contract, big salary next season. They picked up his option for next season. They have this big tax thing. There's one way to, partial way to get out of it is to move him. Now you probably can't take a salary coming back, or at least a future salary coming back. I don't know. Like there are some tricky things coming up, and they can't really trade Poole until next season. So that's not a quick solution.
I was talking to my friend yesterday, Jerry Reynolds. I do a podcast with Jerry Reynolds. He used to coach the Kings, and we were talking yesterday about Wiseman, Ray. And this isn't like one of my buddies. This is a guy who used to coach in the league, and he said, "Look, Wiseman hasn't played. Wiseman needs to play, and if he can't play with the varsity, he needs to play with the JVs. But I don't know if sending Wiseman to the G League, I'm not sure how much that addresses, because his issues are having the sense of anticipation and the sense of recognition that he needs at the NBA level. If he goes down and balls out in the G League and builds up some confidence, I'm not sure that addresses the areas in which they really need him to improve."
Okay, but sitting him doesn't do that either.
Agreed. Absolutely.
So
you're absolutely right.
You're left with one option. If you believe that playing time can give you the best chance of getting the best Wiseman you can get, playing time's not up here. I mean, they're making that clear. He should almost ask for a trip to the G League and just say, I need to get some run, and if I'm not getting it here and I don't want to leave, then send me down there. And then they give him, okay, here's what we want to see from you, and do it with specificity. They don't need to see him running free throw line to free throw line, pulling up from 18. They don't need that.
No.
They need him to be a warrior center, which is get rebounds, block shots, chain shots, set picks, initiate the offense without having the ball. And that's what he's got to be able to do. And you only get that if you basically tell the head coach in Santa Cruz, that's what we want from Wiseman. You make sure that that's all he's giving us for now.
That's why I think it's fair to question the wisdom of drafting him in the first place, because there weren't a lot of reasons to assume that he could be that type of player. He wasn't that type of player. So they gambled. They took a swing on talent, and right now it's apparent to me that Wiseman is not that type of center, doesn't want to be that type of center, and that's why I'm saying, in my opinion, I've seen enough to convince me it's not going to work. And I know it would be foolhardy to make that decision now, but that's my honest opinion based on what we've seen. I don't think it's going to work with Wiseman. What would you do right now? What would be your plan? So you're sending, I'm not trying to corner you so I can come after you. What would be your plan? You would send Wiseman to the G League? Would you, Kuminga, how do you figure out what to do with him?
I don't know. One of them. And then maybe bring that one back up and then send the other one down if you're not using him.
If I did think that maybe I would be able to trade Wiseman for something useful, as Tim Kawakami suggests, and that makes a lot of sense to me. What would be my best course of action if I'm thinking that? Am I better off? How do I preserve his trade value, in other words? And I know that's not your primary objective is to help him now. But if that were part of my equation here, my calculation, what's the best solution?
If you were thinking that Wiseman gets you a better return.
Yeah, and maybe not right now.
You send Wiseman down first, try to ramp him up, and then bring him back up, and then see if he's now got what you've asked him to do. And if he does, you don't trade him.